Hello, I'm Dr. Don Hall, founder of Lifelong Health. Today we're talking about diabetes, what you should know. Diabetes is one of our most common health problems in the United States, and it's also one of our most costly. Did you realize that about 1 out of every 11 adults in the United States already has diabetes? That's nearly 30 million people. And of that number, about 8 million don't even realize that they have diabetes. If you take people that are age 65 and above, seniors, that number jumps up to about 1 in every 4 seniors has diabetes already. So you can see it's a very common problem. As we'll look at in a minute, it has a lot of serious health complications. There's also a new disease we call prediabetes. It's simply the early stages of diabetes, not high enough yet to be called diabetes, but also the blood sugar is still high enough that it can cause serious damage to your health. The sad news is that about 1 out of every 3 adults in the United States has prediabetes. That's about 85 million people, and already damage is occurring. As you can see, it's very prevalent and something that we need to take action on in the United States. It's estimated that this problem is going to even continue to get worse for a while. It's estimated now that if you have a baby born today, he has 1 chance in 3 of becoming a diabetic. If the person is Hispanic in origin, it's 1 chance in 2. So you can see it's a very serious problem, and we want to learn what we can do to help prevent that or to manage it. When the person has diabetes, the blood sugar levels become too high in the blood, and when that blood sugar gets high, it damages the organs. It can damage the heart. In fact, most people, about 70 to 80% of people who have diabetes, will eventually die from heart disease. It damages the arteries that's going to the brain, and so it's a very common cause of stroke. It also doubles the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. You can see it's not very healthy for the brain. It causes your blood lipids to be abnormal. Blood lipids being your LDL cholesterol. When that becomes too high, that clogs the arteries and can cause, again, both heart attacks and stroke. It can cause the triglyceride levels to be high, and it lowers the protective HDL levels. Every aspect of it, it harms the circulation. The blood vessels that go to the eye are also damaged, and so diabetes is a leading cause of blindness. And it also damages the small arteries in the kidney, and diabetes is the leading cause of kidney failure in the United States. It's amazing that about 74,000 people currently in the United States have to have dialysis every week to be able to survive, largely caused by diabetes. So you can see it's a very serious problem. One other thing that affects is the blood pressure. About 71% of people who have diabetes also have high blood pressure. And the damaging part about that is high blood pressure damages many of the same organs that high blood sugar does. So we want to be able to prevent this. Now there's good news. On the prevention side, studies have been done by Harvard University with a women's health study, about 80,000 women that were followed for 14 years. They simply divided women into 2 groups, those who had any risk factors for diabetes and those who didn't. Risk factors would be things like being overweight, sedentary, smoking. Some of the other things would be poor diet, a low fiber intake, a high intake of the wrong kinds of unhealthy fats, and lack of exercise. So people who had any of these risk factors were put in one category. If they had none of those risk factors, they were put in another category. And after many years, they looked at who developed diabetes and who didn't. And the difference was a 10-fold difference. Those with no risk factors had a 90% decreased risk of developing diabetes. So that's good news, isn't it? It means that if we do choose a healthy lifestyle, we can prevent it. But what if you already have a high risk for diabetes? What if you perhaps already have prediabetes? Well, the government did a second study called the Diabetes Prevention Trial. And they took a large number, several thousand of these people, and they put them into 2 groups. One group was left as a control, where they never changed anything. And the other group, they said, let's put them on a healthy lifestyle. So they had them eat healthier, more high-fiber foods, cut back on the high cholesterol foods and the high saturated fat foods. They cut back on the high glycemic index foods, those things like sugar and soda pop and those kinds of things. And then they had them exercise, And then a third thing that they had them do was to try to lose some weight. Their goal was to lose only just 10 or 15% of their weight. They actually only lost 7% of their weight, but that made a significant difference, as you'll see. After 3 years, they compared the two groups, and in those groups that had chosen a healthier lifestyle, they reduced the risk of developing type 2 diabetes during that period of time by 68%. Well, that's encouraging again, isn't it? A 2/3 decrease compared to those who made no change in their lifestyle. So this helps us to see that there is a lot that can be done in preventing diabetes. The only way to know if your blood sugar level is high is to get it checked. If you're over the age of 40, everyone is recommended that they get their blood sugar levels checked regularly by their doctor or in a screening program. If you are high risk, you would want to have it done even sooner. If your blood sugar levels are 100 and above, that would indicate prediabetes. If it's 126 milligrams per deciliter or higher, that's usually the point where we say that that indicates diabetes. And very important to have that checked and see, especially if you have a family history of diabetes or high blood sugar in your family. Talking about prevention, there's much that can be done. I've written a book recently called 9 Ways to Prevent Diabetes. And so you can see there's a number of ways. In fact, if I'd write it today, we'd give you 2 more. But by making changes, as we talked about earlier, being physically active, getting our weight down, even losing 10 or 15 pounds, changing our diet, eating more plant-based foods and a healthier intake of high-fiber foods, cutting back on the sugar and refined foods, soft drinks, white bread, pastry, potatoes, hash browns and French fries, these kinds of things all seem to raise our blood sugar level very quickly. So we need to be careful of those foods, and then eating the more healthy foods in their place. And then keeping physically active. If we do that, it make a big difference. New studies that we're seeing now, people who get adequate vitamin D and making sure they get adequate sleep are also have a lower risk of developing diabetes. Now, if you already have diabetes, the American Diabetes Association has a little way of helping us to remind the key things that should be done. It's called the ABCs of managing diabetes. The A is for A1C. It tells how high your blood sugar levels have been over the last 3 months. Important to have that checked regularly to see how you're doing. B is for blood pressure. You want your blood pressure to be less than 135/85, because if your blood pressure is high, along with high blood sugar, that's very damaging to your health. C is for cholesterol. You want your cholesterol levels to be as low as you can get them, at least below the LDL cholesterol below 100 milligrams per deciliter. And D is for diet. We want to eat more of a plant-based diet, more fruits and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts. These kinds of things are protective. Cut back on the high saturated fat, cholesterol foods, the red meats, the refined foods like white bread, white rice, white potatoes, French fries, those kinds of things, soda pop. All of those raise the blood sugar level quickly and increase the risk for diabetes and damage. And then the E, last one, is for exercise. Aim for at least a half an hour of some regular exercise like brisk walking, riding your bike, swimming laps, working in your garden if you like to do active gardening and those kinds of things, at least a half an hour every day. Following these guidelines, it can help you to minimize much of the damage that diabetes can cause.